Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Knock. Who's there?
Hey! It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The White House issuing a statement from President Trump responding to the appointment of a special counsel. The president says in part, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein naming former FBI Director Robert Mueller to oversee the investigation into Russia's election interference. Rosenstein signing the order before alerting Attorney General Jeff Sessions and only giving the White House less than an hour's notice before making it public.
Wow.
The surprise announcement comes after mounting pressure for the deputy AG to appoint a special prosecutor after President Trump initially cited a memo Rosenstein wrote as the basis for why he fired James Comey.
He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey.
One source telling CNN Rosenstein is throwing President Trump overboard with a special counsel, a move the White House opposed.
There's frankly no need for a special prosecutor. You have two Senate committees that are looking into this. The FBI is conducting their own review.
A statement from Rosenstein explaining, the public interest requires me to place this investigation under the authority of a person who exercises a degree of independence from the normal chain of command. The move follows back-to-back bombshells for President Trump, including a damning memo from Comey where he documented private conversations with President Trump, in which he says the president asked him to drop the investigation and to fire National Security Advisor Michael Flynn just one day after Flynn was terminated. And today, more bad news for the embattled administration. The New York Times reporting that President Trump knew Flynn was under federal investigation for secretly working as a paid lobbyist on behalf of Turkish interests weeks before the inauguration, and yet still named him as one of his top advisors, giving him access to the nation's biggest secrets. Another report by McClatchy connects the dots even further, alleging that Flynn stopped a U.S. military plan that Turkey opposed. The plan was eventually restored after Flynn was fired.
Yeah, and that plan was to fight ISIS. Hi, everybody. Hi. Hi. Sure, I seem calm, cool, collected. You have no idea how fast this thing is moving. Right now, Trump is giving his very first news conference since the special counsel was named, but he's doing it in a joint appearance, I believe, with the president of Colombia. Y entonces hay muchas palabras, before the questions. So when they start asking, see, now I'm thinking in Spanish. Cuando empiezan preguntando, then we'll go to it. So right now he's saying, he's talking about ICE and Border Patrol and blah, blah, blah. And I guess he's going to introduce the Colombian president sometime. And then, this is already late. They were supposed to start at 3:30. Then they pushed it back to 3:45. It is now 4:09 and they just began. So I'm guessing, the blowhard will go on. And then, we'll have the president of Colombia and that will have to be translated. So that takes extra time. And then when the questions begin, we will go to the president. The only thing I'm looking for now is whether or not he announces, wait for it, everybody, that our new FBI director is Joe Lieberman. Joe Lieberman, the man who I called on Election Day 2000. Oh, yes, Election Day 2000, because his wife, we were just a local show back then in 2000. This was prior to the launch of the national show, moving to New York and becoming that girl and, just having an apartment in Manhattan and all the, great stuff that, was going to come my way because we were launching the show nationally. And then, of course, we found out it was with Air America. So, best of times, worst of times, kind of like a Russian novel. Yeah, it was like that. However, 2000, I was working in Palm Beach County, voting in Palm Beach County, living in Palm Beach County, broadcasting to Palm Beach County. And when I got back from voting, I started the show and the phone lines just exploded with people saying, oh my God, what was the story with that ballot? I think I voted for Pat Buchanan. And it was because of the butterfly ballot. And the butterfly ballot was a piece of machinery. Okay, this was prior to coloring and marks. You had a little stylus. You had a little pointy pen. Sort of they don't let Floridians have weapons now in the polling places, but back then you had like this little weapon. It was a little and you'd punch a hole into your ballot. Now, the butterfly ballot was an interesting ballot in that instead of just one flat piece of paper where you would punch a hole next to whoever's name you wanted to vote for, oh no, they had names on both sides of a fold out, almost like a notebook. And then like where the spiral would be in a spiral notebook, that's where you punched, except that the Bush choice and the Bush choice was hole number one, clearly hole number one. Holes number 2 and 3 were not clear. Number 2 was if you wanted to vote for Al Gore and Joe Lieberman, see? And then on the other side of the page was choice number 3, but they weren't numbered like that. And choice number 3 was Pat Buchanan, and I can't remember who his running mate was. Perhaps somebody out there is much more geeky than I am, which is really time to find a life if you've gone past where I live. In geekdom. Anyway, the phones lit up, and I mean, they were saying, I think I voted for Pat Buchanan. I couldn't tell where the hole was for Al Gore, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? I think I did too. That was the year I think I voted for a white nationalist, if all truth be told. And to this minute, I don't know who I voted for that year, 2000. Anyway, the election was contested for 36 days. And states' rights be damned. It went to the federal Supreme Court, went to the big U.S. Supreme Court to decide who should count the votes and whether the votes should be counted. And you know what they decided? Oh, the hell with it. It's America. We don't need to count no stinking votes. Let's give it to Bush. That's what happened in 2000. Well, when I sat down that day, election day 2000, I had Joe Lieberman's phone number because they gave me an interview the day before from the campaign trail. But oh no, not with Joe Lieberman. No, with Joe's wife, Hadassah. I got to interview Hadassah Lieberman, which, oh yes, everybody wanted to hear what Hadassah had to say. The vice presidential candidate to Al Gore's wife? Sure, who wouldn't want to hear from her the day before Election Day? And of course, the conversation was scintillating in that she discussed with me the porta potties on the campaign trail are inadequate. This is what she talked to me about. Needless to say, we cut the interview short, but of course now in my guest booking Rolodex, I had her phone number. So when I got back from voting, I called that number and said, Hadassah, put your husband on the phone. Yes, no time for pleasantries. And besides, we had already talked porta potties. All the boundaries had been removed. I think I even asked her front to back or back to front. Which do you suggest? Yeah, I mean, it was really, there wasn't any conversation to be had there. So I called Joe. I said, Joe, and I also called my congressman at the time, who was Robert Wexler. And Robert Wexler got in his car and came over to my studio because he knew what I knew, that this election had been rigged in Palm Beach County by virtue of this confusing butterfly ballot, and that we needed to hand count these votes, and that we needed to put in a request right away to contest and to count the votes. And the Gore campaign was working in the state courts where this belongs, because states' rights, being states' rights, the states get to choose the manner in which they select their electors, which is called an election. I called Joe Lieberman, and you know what Joe said to me that day? I told him exactly what was going on. I told him how many people had this problem, that my mother was crying, that she thought that she had voted for Pat Buchanan as well. I thought I had voted for Pat Buchanan, and all the callers were calling in and he could hear them. Okay, we let them come on the air and say what had happened to them so he would know it was not just some girl sitting in West Palm Beach. You know what he said? Oh, Randy, it'll be fine. That was his response. And of course, 36 days later, the Supreme Court chose George Bush, and the rest is history. He crashed the economy, took us to war in Iraq, took us to war in Afghanistan, surrounded Tora Bora, where bin Laden was supposed to be, on all three sides, which I'll never get over. I mean, I'm not much of a war planner, but I am a planner. And I kind of know, even if I had a dog in the backyard, you know, you don't fence him in on all three sides. Because the fourth side is where he's going to run away. You know what I mean? Oh, God. So anyway, I'm waiting to hear if he chooses Lieberman. And the reason why I think that he's going to choose Lieberman is because they have been reporting all morning long that he is the front runner. All right. That said, I'm watching this press conference. And, of course, now the president of Colombia is speaking, and he's talking about social development programs and that they're working, with the Trump administration to take advantage of his kindness, and the opportunity that Trump, seems to present Colombia with. I have no idea what he's talking about, and that's in English and Spanish, so I'm not airing that portion, but of course I'm ready to go. So let's look at what has happened in the 6 headlines in just the past 24 hours. This is a mind-blowing thing, and this is why I say, if I appear cool, calm, and collected, it's because I'm awesome, because I'm rattled. Gotta say, first of all, yesterday at 6 o'clock, just as we were signing on, and I had to tweet it. I think I got it before BuzzFeed got it on their Twitter feed. This is why you need to follow us at Randi Rhodes on Twitter, because I tweet all these things that you need to know. Okay? Now, at 6 o'clock yesterday, the White House, the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, appointed a special counsel, and not just any special counsel. What? Oh, Stein or Steen, who cares? Okay, it's a big debate. It's a big debate in the country. Rosenstein, is this what we want to go with? Stein? Yes, we want to go with Stein. All right. Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General. Why the Deputy Attorney General did appoint a special prosecutor, but not just any special prosecutor. Oh, no. Our friend Mueller. Right? Those of you who have listened that long since Mueller was our FBI director, you know that is what I called him. Mueller. Yeah, he picked Mueller. And Mueller, of course, Robert S. Mueller. You know what the S stands for? Okay, this is the level of geekdom that I succumb to. The S, Robert S. Mueller, his middle name is Swan. Yeah, so that will be his code name on this show now, Swan. We will just call him Swan. So, like, if I get any information that I want to pass on the sly, we'll just say we got it from Swan. Okay? All right. So, we got news that that Rod Rosenstein. Now, why did Rod have to appoint the special prosecutor and not the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions? Because Jeff Sessions was caught lying to the Senate about Russia and his contacts with Russia. What?
It looks like he's taking questions.
Taking questions. Okay, I promised I will do it. Let me just do this. Hang on. I'm going to escape. There's a nice picture of Mueller. Let's do that. And here we are.
Investigation.
All right, let's take a break so I can figure out why 2 things are playing, because I don't know why they are. But he is taking questions. We will monitor. I will back up and start all over again, okay? 20 after. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.